Alright, so here we are with game 1 of the winter finals in the S17 tournament. We have MathemaTiGer playing Crucias, Titan of the Waves, and MoMo2000 playing Teferi, Time Raveler. Start off, MathemaTiGer is going to take a look at the Teferi player's hand, and Sunset Revelry, Long Reverse Pull, and Lorien Revealed. Three different choices as to what he's going to take. Right now there is no second blue. Notably, Lorien Revealed gives Momo a way to fetch up the second blue. So is he going to value that, or is he going to value taking Sunset Revelry, which is going to give blockers, it's going to give life, and possibly a card. 2 does a lot against an aggro deck, which is the kind of deck that Crucias is running here. But not valuing that, valuing instead Long Reverse Pull. Momo's up now. So he has 1 tap land, plains, and an island. It's important here that he finds some way to stabilize in the next few turns versus what is definitely going to be an onslaught. The Crucias deck running a lot of very sticky threats that can recur pretty easily. And also with Crucias' ability, able to search up a lot of different threats depending on the situation. So MathemaTiGer goes ahead and plays Smuggler's Copter, which is one of those difficult to remove threats. It's an artifact vehicle that can be crewed for 1, making it really easy to crew, and it gives card selection. When it attacks, you draw, then discard. So this is not easy to answer for a blue-white control deck, as long as it's an artifact. It's going to be pretty safe there on the board. So right now, Momo is thinking about which land to play. Next turn, Crucias can potentially come down, so he might be thinking about holding up Orin's Chant, and he is. So he's going to go ahead and make sure that he buys himself, basically time walks MathemaTiGer. Time walks himself, and MathemaTiGer play a land, but can't add to the board. So it gives him it gives Momo an opportunity here to island cycle, play out a 3rd land, and then play out Teferi, potentially bouncing the Smuggler's Copter and getting a card. It looks like this is what he's going to do. A little pause for the cycling on Unearth. We'll see if Momo reads that as anything. But luckily with Teferi's ability, this is the unnerfed Teferi Time Raveler. Something like Bolt is not an option here. So now MathemaTiGer is looking at Teferi on board. He's got his commander he could play, and he's got a few options for his 2-drops. Scrap Heap Scrounger, Smuggler's Copter, Imperious Lootmonger. Now if he plays a creature here, it does mean that Sunset Revelry will be active next turn, and at instant speed too, if Teferi stays around and pluses. Now of course, Sunset Revelry will not get past Smuggler's Copter plus something to crew it, so that might be what we see MathemaTiGer do here. Smuggler's Copter, and then Imperious Lootmonger. So he's going to discard Scrap Heap Scrounger, which can come back by exiling another creature from the graveyard. You can also unearth it later, and is going to take a look at the Teferi player's deck. Now, he's probably going to hit a few counter and removal spells, which might not be great in this situation. Especially if it's a double blue or double white, something. But does get to see 3 of them. Take a look. What does the aggro player pull? The Wreck Rakdos aggro player pull out of the control deck. And is going to take Archmage's Charm. Okay, never mind. With Heist, it's any color, so that works. Archmage's Charm, giving the counter spell and the draw potential. Pretty nice here, although with Teferi still on board, there's not much in terms of counterspelling that can happen. So Momo's going to plus Teferi and pass with Sunset Revelry up. Again, if Smuggler's Copter gets in, Teferi can be taken off the board, although it's possible that the Teferi player, the Momo, can also Snapcaster and kick Orym's Chant, meaning that MathemaTiGer can't attack if they do something like crew the Smuggler's Copter with the Impetuous Lootmonger, or Crucias if they're going to play that, Grim Lavamancer. It's always a balancing act when you're Rakdos playing in, or any aggro deck playing into this blue-white matchup. You know they're board wipes, so you don't want to commit too much, but you do need to put some amount of pressure on the opponent. Momo also has the potential of deluging here, or you could also just let Teferi go and then again play and bounce the Copter. Could Sunset Revelry or Deluge and then play Teferi again if needed and bounce the Copter. MathemaTiGer is probably thinking about whether or not to play out Crucias. What the play is here, not drawing a 5th land, which for the moment is okay, but it's definitely would rather a land here than not. So here, taking a lot of time to decide whether or not to play Crucias. Also, whether you're going to play Crucias now or post-combat is definitely an interesting choice. Because if you wait till post-combat, you force out response first. Now we're going to get Snapcaster's Mage into perhaps Long River's Pull or Orym's Chant. But it's possible that MathemaTiGer wants to get that response out before combat. Although we know from looking at their hand that there's not much going on. There's no bolt, there's no fatal push. So here, indeed, Long River's Pull comes out and counters Crucias. This does mean that Teferi is going to die this turn to the Smuggler's Copter. So Momo here valuing the counterplay, although with Unearth up, MathemaTiGer is able to go haha and get their Crucias right back. The loot off of the Smuggler's Copter is going to draw an Unlicensed Hearse, which will give MathemaTiGer access to clearing out Momo's graveyard, but it's just going to discard that Unlicensed Hearse and go up for Culligan's Command. So this is, as the control player, having been in this position and played a lot against MathemaTiGer, this is really something you hate to see. Getting the Crucias back there means you basically blew your turn on a counterspell. You can't block the Lootmonger with your mage, with your Snapcaster Mage. You can't obviously block the Smuggler's Copter. Now the opponent's ahead on board. You have no Wrath, no removal even in hand. The Crucias player hits something off of the hearse, something higher. You don't know what it is. So you're behind on board. You have more cards in hand, but 3 of them are lands. One's a draw spell. you can't effectively block the Lootmonger or the Copter, and playing the Sunset Revelry isn't going to draw you a card here. It's just going to create your blockers, your 1/1s that aren't going to effectively block again. So Momo, not liking any of their options, is going to say your go and hold up Memory Deluge or an activation of the gate. So MathemaTiGer says okay. He's going to go ahead and attack in. Loot gets a land, so we're going to see, do they keep the land, or with the Crucias engine going and the extra treasures available, do they ditch the land and look for something a little more interesting? We've also got Kellen and Culligan's Command in hand. With Archmage's Charm up now too, the Teferi player is going to have an unfortunate surprise if they try and cast something into open mana. So seeing the 4 cards in hand, seeing Momo's 4 cards in hand, it's definitely possible that the Culligan's Command does not look so interesting. Also, the Snapcaster Mage can't really block well anyways, so you don't care so much about killing it. Gets rid of the Kellen. Keeps the land. In comes the damage. Plays out the land, and just decides to leave the mana open for the Archmage's Charm. The Crucias player now playing like a bona fide control player. Going to get rid of the Culligan's Command and search up 4 drops, so they will get Shieldred. So now MathemaTiGer going to be thinking about, do I want to counter this draw spell or whatever comes next on their turn? It's going to let Deluge go through. The Momo has something that's going to give him a little more board presence, is going to block better. Beza, the Bounding Spring, and removal or counter. With neither in hand, this is definitely an important question. Which do you value more? Getting rid of something on board or being able to counter the next threat? You know they've got something higher than K Command, or Culligan's Command. If you get the mana, you can also double your Snapcaster Mage, and indeed decides to take Beza and 3 steps ahead. So now is going to go for possibly Beza, and that will get hit by Archmage's Charm. But Momo might be going the more conservative route here, playing a Sunset Revelry. Still just getting 2 modes off of it, going back up to 20 life, the 2 1/1s. Still doesn't block efficiently, but might be playing this out. Momo might be playing this out to see if there is some sort of stop, which there is. Now, of course, MathemaTiGer has Scrap Heap Scrounger in the yard, so that can also represent a stop, and is going to cycle Scrap Heap Scrounger back, just putting more pressure on the board, another recurring threat. Draws a land. Will they decide to keep this land, or bin it to Crucias, or to Smuggler's Copter? Some really nice attacks here. Lootmonger has to be blocked by 3 creatures in order to be killed. Scrap Heap Scrounger has to be blocked by either the Snapcaster or both tokens, and the Copter attacks it for free. So Indeed is going to attack him with everything. He's going to drop the land and keep a Bitter Triumph. Snapcaster will block the Scrap Heap Scrounger, and Momo throws a token in front of the Impetuous Lootmonger. plenty more creatures in MathemaTiGer's graveyard, meaning the Scrounger can come back next turn at instant speed during Momo's turn. Crucias trigger will bin Bitter Triumph for Ambitious and draws Lelia. Momo still not drawing a Wrath is really facing down a tough looking board, but now has the mana to play Beza with counter Magicka. Sees that MathemaTiGer has just been a removal spell and is thinking, yep, okay, this is the moment. This will give the board presence that they need to be able to block a little more efficiently. Still going to have to deal with Smuggler's Copter. MathemaTiGer thinking, okay, I see 3 mana up. This easily represents a counterspell. Do I want to try and counter with Archmage's Charm, or do I want to hold that up for later? Decides now is the moment. Archmage's Charm is the Beza, which gives them another treasure token. And now Momo is again in a difficult position of saying, do I want to defend my Beza here? I see they have 2 threats in hand. I know neither of those are lands because they both traded up. So they've got 2 threats. Am I going to tap out to put Beza on board, or am I going to keep this out for one of their threats and suffer another turn? No easy choice here, because you don't put Beza on the board, you're just eating a ton of damage over the next 2 turns. No way to stop it. Since you don't have a Wrath in hand, you really need to put up some sort of wall. Hope that the Crucias player is not going to have removal. And MathemaTiGer brings back the Scrap Heap Scrounger. Again. Still has a clean attack in with the Smuggler's Copter. Because there were 2 creatures out on MathemaTiGer's side of the board, and MoMo2000 playing the Beza had 2 creatures, they did not get the additional token trigger, and they did not get the card draw trigger. They only got the life gain trigger, which is not nothing in this matchup. Anything that buys them time to clear the board and set up for a longer control match is definitely valuable. But MathemaTiGer can potentially So they're thinking of playing out Lelia and attacking in. So this would force a block from the Beza on the Lelia. And it's a way for them to push through additional damage. They'll get a chump block on the Scrap Heap Scrounger. And they'll be able to push through an additional 2 damage with Impetuous Loopmonger. So trying to figure out if that's worth it is MathemaTiGer. Potentially going to activate Hive of the Eye Tyrant. Goes for it. And attacks in with Hive of the Eye Tyrant, saying, okay, you wanna eat one of my creatures? That's fine. I will hit you for 3 more damage, or I can just draw a Ghostfire Slice. So here's the double block on the Hive. Ghostfire Slice can be cast off of the treasure tokens to get rid of Beza, pre-damage to keep the land, which is a pretty nice threat to have around in this sort of matchup. We'll see how MathemaTiGer values it. You're not going to be hitting much else with Ghostfire Slice. You definitely want to keep up your land count. So here we go, indeed, Ghostfire Slice goes on, it's 4 damage, not 5, excuse me, so does lose the land, but also gets rid of all of Momo's board. So the Teferi player, again, position no board, 2 lands in hand, staring down a deck, staring down next turn, potentially 9 damage and at 13 life. So for the moment, anyways, Crucias trigger on the stack. MathemaTiGer trying to figure out, do I want to trade anything in? What am I looking for so that I can close out this game? Do I want some sort of hand hate, disruption? Do I want direct damage? Probably thinking of their list, seeing what they could hit. The Shieldred is definitely guaranteed damage, but is expensive. The Layla, given haste, is great if the opponent plays something like a Wrath next turn. Also a possibility to just keep both of these cards in hand. Yep, and that's what MathemaTiGer is going to do. So, Teferi player draws another land, a castle, Ardenvale, so we'll be able to put up a blocker. But putting up a 1/1 blocker is not the place you want to be against this kind of board. They really were hoping to draw a Wrath or just anything to get them back in the game. At this point, the board is really heavily stacked against them, and even with a Wrath, with Lilia and Shieldred in hand, and Smuggler's Copter on board, MathemaTiGer still has ways to push in damage next turn. And with the treasure token can replay the Crucias as well. This is a really difficult spot for the control player. And really illustrating what I love about MathemaTiGer's deck. It's just such a grindy aggro deck. Really being able to cash in using Crucias in so many different ways to get just the right card for each situation. And the pilot really knows how to use their deck. This deck has been around for a while, doing well for a while, has won a tournament before. Nobody else has picked it up, and I think that's a testament to how well MathemaTiGer has built it and knows what's going on and takes the time to really think through the optimal move each turn. Like I said earlier, I've played against them a lot with my favorite deck, Rafine, and I've lost a lot. It's a tough matchup. Alright, so while I was talking, Momo played out Teferi, bounced Crucias. MathemaTiGer is going to replay Crucias into a counterspell. Bring back Crucias to the command zone. We'll play out a land. Crack the land right away, the Prismatic Vista, and is probably going to play Lilia here. They'll lose the card that gets exiled. If it's a land, they won't be able to play it, and obviously they won't have mana to play anything else, but might be valuing here just the extra damage. Are they going to loot with the Copter? Definitely activate it to get in for more damage. Will they go all face, or will they hit Teferi with something? So Teferi can be replayed again next turn. Bounce a creature, draw a card, but that's not very scary at this state of the game. Go for the Throat is found off of Lilia, and Bloodthirsty Adversary found off of Smuggler's Copter. Both Bloodthirsty Adversary and Shieldred create hits here. You can potentially get back something like Kozilek's Command, or Kozilek's Inquisition, rather. Or Colligan's Command with the Adversary, and indeed is valuing the Adversary with haste and a +1/+1 counter on the mana they have over Shieldred. It's just better off of a wipe. Momo fetches, going down to 6. He's going to hit a Meticulous Archive and hope for a land for a white Wrath off of the top. Does not draw a Wrath. Draws a Path to Exile, which is not going to be enough in this situation. Down to 6 life. Draws another land off of the top. Unfortunate flood a bit there over the last few turns. There's definitely, yep, can use one of the gates to seek. And could still hit a Wrath, but hits a Dig Through Time instead, unfortunately. With their graveyard full, can dig for 2, but there are no there's nothing at 2 mana that's going to clear this board in these colors, unfortunately. And even with the dig through time, still not hitting a Wrath, so really not drawing the ideal cards for this matchup. No way to clear the board, no Divine Purge, no Sanctuary Lockdown. Temporary Lockdown. And passes back to MathemaTiGer, who will be able to close the game out this turn. Going to go ahead and play Bloodthirsty Adversary, and probably get back Inquisition of Kozilek here. Ghostfire Slice, that's right, it can do direct damage, so we'll damage the face. Forgot that that card can hit face. Yeah, and to viewers who haven't played against MathemaTiGer's Crucias deck, it is just such a difficult early game against them. They really always seem to have the card that is best against you, which is often the case because Crucias can search it up, and even without Crucias on board, if Crucias gets killed or countered, as you saw with the Unearth, there are many ways to get Crucias back or to benefit from Crucias being in the graveyard. And great pilot, if MathemaTiGer sniffs a counter, will usually just play around it. And there's so many tough, resilient, kind of sticky, grindy creatures that you have to deal with them, or they will just start whittling down your life, and before you know it, you're close to being dealt lethal. So really great example there of the power of that deck versus Teferi. You know, this is the unnerfed Teferi, the 3-mana Teferi Time Raveler. So for everybody who likes to say that white-blue control or counter magic in Wrath Tribal, which is basically what this Teferi is unbeatable, this was just a masterclass in how easy it is for certain decks to run over blue-white control deck, competitive control deck, unbanned Teferi control deck, given the right deck building and the right play patterns. Really love to see it. MathemaTiGer is going to take a short break now. We'll take a little break too and be back in a few minutes. Alright, here we are back. Game 2. So Momo, the Teferi player, is on the play. This is an ugly hand to keep. You've got the Wrath, you've got the Sunfall, you've got the Counterspell, but with those two lands, you are not happy here. This is a very, very nice hand to see if you are the Teferi player. Go ahead, lead on Command Tower. You can have Stern Scolding, potentially, their turn 1 play. Although, MathemaTiGer, in the spirit of always having it, is going to turn 1 Falsies. Or not, is going to Raucous Theater to Surveil 1. So, possibly turn 2 Thoughtseize, but more likely turn 2 Creature, which might get Stern Scolding. Temporary Lockdown, really great card in this matchup, is going to hit a lot of what Momo wants to be hitting. Low CMC creatures. Momo will go out and go ahead and play out their castle. I thought they might play it out the first turn, but really favoring Stern Scolding. MathemaTiGer, 2 more lands in hand, tons of 2-drops. 2-drop creatures, and that Thoughtseize. So, if they cast a creature, it's going to get hit by Stern Scolding. We know that. They do not. Either Stern Scolding or Swords, depends which they want to hold up. So it's going to let Fear of Missing Out resolve, land on board, and loot. So they're going to drop a lot out, pick up a land. So Momo has the potential here to remove or play Teferi. Is going to Portable Hole, Fear of Missing Out, get it into exile. MathemaTiGer now can Thoughtseize and 2-drop, potentially. Jamming Crucias seems kind of crazy in this position. And the Teferi player is still looking at 2 removal spells, although the Temporary Lockdown will hit their Portable Hole, which is kind of awkward. MathemaTiGer goes ahead, shocks in a land. And we'll go ahead and Thoughtseize. There it is, the turn 3 Thoughtseize. So, do you favor the Wrath, the direct removal, or the counter spell? If you're the aggressive Rakdos player here, you have a hand full of creatures that all get hit by Temporary Lockdown, and they get put under that card. They don't get bounced to your hand. This isn't Divine Purge. Swords could deal with one of your creatures, get rid of its recursion, and Stern Scolding is also a 1-for-1. So, do you favor those 1-for-1s, or do you favor Temporary Lockdown, maybe knowing that you have some enchantment removal in your deck that you can see 2-drop with Crucias, potentially? You could also just play around it by slow rolling them, playing out 1, maybe 2 creatures, and forcing them to commit it, knowing that you're going to get your Fear of Missing Out back once they Temporary Lockdown. And then if you are going to take removal, you probably want to take the Swords rather than the Stern Scolding, because you like having your creatures in the graveyard rather than in exile. You could take the Stern Scolding and play out a 2-drop, forcing them to Swords if they want to, and is going to do this the other way around. Is going to take out the Swords, indeed preferring to keep their creatures on the graveyard of the battlefield, and is going to play out Stern Scolding. Is going to play out, Rahilda. Now this option means that the Teferi player can now bounce and counter. So the Teferi player gets a turn on the board, is going to let the Rahilda resolve, and MathemaTiGer, now feeling the pressure a little bit on their end, is going to play a Robert of the Rich second, is trying to force out the Stern Scolding. It's okay, if you let me resolve this, I'm going to kill Teferi, and I'm going to exile the top card of your library. So Momo thinking now, yeah, okay, that portable hole, maybe not great. Now, especially without my swords, if I do temporary lockdown, they're going to get their creature back, anyways. So what looked like a great wrath before is now really coming back to bite them a little bit. Maybe the optimal play earlier on would have been that swords, knowing they have the temporary lockdown in hand, and is going to let resolve Robber of the Rich. Really interesting. Okay. And gets the treasure cruise off of the top. Teferi's back in the command zone. 2 creatures on board. Both of them are going to steal your stuff if you let them stick around. Rahilda on combat damage, and Robber of the Rich is going to give you exile. Also, the cards it's exiled previously are still available to you to play each time it attacks, I believe. I might be thinking of Rahilda. Momo is going to go ahead and temporary lockdown, get rid of those 2, but give back fear of missing out. So MathemaTiGer can double spell to get past the Stern Scolding. Fear of missing out is going to give 4 damage because they do have the Delirium. We have the card count in the graveyard. So again, what looked like a strong opening hand turned out to be remarkably and perhaps surprisingly complex for Momo to play out in this matchup. Again, showing the strength of Rakdos aggro, especially in this deck, just really making the decisions of the opponent difficult. In terms of what do they remove, what do they value. And MathemaTiGer is interestingly going to play Dark Confident first without playing the land. So Momo now has to decide, okay, do I let them have Dark Confident and they're going to start drawing extra cards, or do I counter this and then they possibly jam Crucias and start ditching their cards in their hands for cards that are a little better in this matchup? Again, with 3 lands in hand, not where the control player wants to be. And if this isn't countered, then MathemaTiGer can play out a land and try and run in another threat, or just sit on their Dark Confident and their fear of missing out. This might be a case where Momo is trying to figure out, is trying to hope, is trying to build up their hope that none of the other cards in MathemaTiGer's hands are lands. Does go ahead and Stern Scolding the Dark Confident. Now out comes the Crucias. Bins the land and finds Kellen. Alright, so here could have been worse. The draw of the Beza is going to let Momo play Beza. They're going to get the creature trigger as well as the life trigger off of it, and they'll be able to hold up a Ganjo, which MathemaTiGer sees. MathemaTiGer knows that card is in their hand, and instead of playing Beza, I think the idea here is they're wanting to hit also the draw card trigger and use a gate this turn, and or use a gate this turn. And MathemaTiGer drew into the one ring, which is, if they're able to resolve, going to mean pretty much the end of this matchup, because they're going to have all the card advantage of the world, and they're going to kill the Teferi player long before the life loss is important enough for it to matter. 3 cards in hand. MathemaTiGer now is probably thinking about whether or not to play out the ring. Don't need another threat. Right now they have 7 damage on board. That's a 3-turn clock. They might want to play out 1 more creature just to turn it into a 2-turn clock. Or do they try and jam the ring here, knowing that if it resolves, if there's no counter spell, then it's pretty much game over. And is going to go ahead and jam the ring. So all Momo can do is activate a gate and pray and hope. Will cost 4 mana, so not able to play a counter spell off the back of it. And there, the One Ring resolves, and I hate to say it, but I'm going to go ahead and call the game from this point in MathemaTiGer's favor. Will Crucias trigger, get Ghostfire Slice off of bidding a land. Now Momo's going to go ahead and play Beza. Still won't get the card draw trigger, but will get the creature, the token, and the life gain trigger. Does have counter magic up, but notably Change the Equation can only hit spells of red or green that are more than 2 CMC. So it cannot hit Beseech the Mirror, cannot hit, and it can hit all the rest. So MathemaTiGer doesn't know about that counter spell. They might try and attack in and then Ghostfire Slice the Beza like they did before, and that Ghostfire Slice will most likely get countered. After last game, we saw not having the board presence just cost the Teferi player so much. Hoping to dig for the right removal spell at the right time doesn't cut it. You need to be able to block. Here, Beza stopping pretty much the whole board of MathemaTiGer is going to buy time to draw into more Wrath and more removal. So MathemaTiGer's thinking hard about what to do. Plays the land out pre-combat and swings in with just fear of missing out. And deciding what to swing in with. Yep, just fear of missing out is indeed going to go for Ghostfire Slice on Beza if it blocks. Here we go. Momo does block with Beza. Eats the fear of missing out. MathemaTiGer hovering over. Yep, there's the Ghostfire Slice on the Beza. Cannot be countered. Interesting. That's right, because it's colorless, it's not red. Haha, forgot about that. So, cannot be countered. Change the equation, not doing enough there, and losing the Beza again, just really, really rough. Crucias goes to the yard. Can already almost escape it, if not escape it exactly. Crucias does get countered by Change the Equation, luckily for the Teferi player, for Momo. And Crucias trigger is going to bin Misery Shadow and pick up Bone Crusher Giant. So Divine Purge here, another of the interesting wraths. Also a bit of a non-bow with Temporary Lockdown. Divine Purge hits everything that's CMC 3 or higher and bounces it back to hand, where it will then cost more mana. So Divine Purging would get rid of the Temporary Lockdown, but what Momo might be thinking here is, alright, I'm going to Teferi, I'm going to bounce my Temporary Lockdown, and then I will Divine Purge the board. But instead of doing that, plays up the Teferi pluses, and is probably going to go for a Divine Purge next turn. Keeps the Teferi out of stomp range for Bone Crusher Giant, importantly. And MathemaTiGer is going to level up Kellen. Draw 3 cards off of the ring, so really just burying Teferi player in card advantage at this point. And if they need to, MathemaTiGer can beseech to get rid of the ring. Still no easy way to deal with the ring for the Teferi player. MathemaTiGer is going to fetch up a land. And is going to get rid of the 2 blockers with Shatter Skull Smashing. Okay, says Momo. It's fine. Double attack in on Teferi, and now is Momo's chance. Do I Divine Purge now? There's still 4 mana open, so this is not an easy decision to go shields down on your counter spell, but we'll go ahead and do it. Oh, and it does not hit enchantments, so it is not going to hit the Temporary Lockdown. It will hit the treasure tokens, Crucias and Kellen. So this is a great time buying spell. And Kellen's going to cost 3, Crucius is going to cost 5 if it goes to hand. Meaning that the only play after this open to MathemaTiGer is either the Bone Crusher or the Smuggler's Copter. They have 3 lands open, I'm sorry, so they can also run out Kellen again. MathemaTiGer is going to leave Crucius for the moment, it looks like, in the exile zone with the permanent effect of Divine Purge, since anyways to set it back to the command zone would mean the cost stays the same. This way you get a recast at 5 mana from here, and then potentially another recast at 5 mana from the command zone. But what's the play? Smuggler's Copter or Kellen? Do you throw out all your mana, or do you put down the Copter and then you can already start attacking in with it next turn? Teferi's at 5. Not sure that Momo even wants to bounce the ring at this point, maybe preferring to just let damage start ticking in. Okay, and there is the Bone Crusher played out by MathemaTiGer. 4-3 says MathemaTiGer, you are going to start taking a beating, or Teferi is, if you don't do something here. giving you a bounce target to put Teferi down to 2, which does put them in Bone Crusher range. But Momo also has the castle that can just chump block, opting not to bounce the ring. So the damage is adding up. However, so is the card advantage. And at this point, the amount of cards and the mana too, we're at 7 mana for MathemaTiGer, 8 with a land this turn, means they're really going to be able to push through a lot of threats. And at some point, Momo's just not going to have the cards to keep up with it. I'm going to start with an Unearth on Cackling Observer, which is going to be able to take a look at Momo's hand. So either you burn a spell on the Unearth, or you lose a card and you lose board presence. So it's going to change the equation on the Unearth. Now, if Momo activates Castle Ardenvale, they're not going to have enough mana left for Tail's End, and if they play Tail's End, they're not going to have enough mana left to activate Castle Ardenvale. So, bit of a squeeze they're in here. Because of the low curve of their deck, MathemaTiGer just has so many options available. Can easily double, potentially triple spell this turn. Thinking about running out a Crucia to get rid of the last card in Momo's hand. Of course, that last card is a Tail's End, which is going to be used on the Crucia. If it comes out, but that will mean that they cannot block Bone Crusher. Yep, indeed, here comes Crucia. Take 1. And Crucia is going to get hit with Tail's End, most likely. Really no reason not to here, other than wanting to block the Bone Crusher with a Castle Ardenvale token. There goes. Now MathemaTiGer can run out Phoenix of Ash and can easily get rid of Teferi this turn. And Momo might be saying, you know what, I've got 18 life, I can replay Teferi, bounce a creature. The ring is going to kill him, hopefully, with its 5 counters, but with its 4 counters, sorry. But what Teferi player does not know is that MathemaTiGer has Beseech the Mirror in hand and could get rid of that ring at any time. It's convenient for him. Because Momo hasn't been able to keep up a card advantage, again, the one ring doing its job for MathemaTiGer, they don't have a way to counter Beseech. And here they can either Wrath the board or play Teferi. If they Wrath the board, then we're just going to see more creatures played out. Crucia can come back. Phoenix can come back. If they play Teferi, what are you really bouncing here? You bounce the Bone Crusher Giant, it's just more damage to face. You bounce Phoenix of the Ash, it comes right back. You bounce the One Ring, you've reset it for them, and they can start drawing again without having to beseech. So really just no easy outs. Is going to Supreme Verdict. This shows MathemaTiGer, okay, the way is clear for Beseech. Can draw one last time off of the ring and then Beseech it. Getting something like a Lelia, potentially. It's a little dangerous to let it go for much longer than this, because if you get your Beseech countered in a future turn, then you're just dead. So So also probably wanting to set up the best lethal here, the quickest, most efficient lethal. Also developing the board generally, so it's going to potentially play out Smuggler's Copter here, which means in future turns it will be able to attack in, it won't have summoning sickness anymore, and it's going to avoid other Wraths, and most spot removal that Momo will draw. So there's Smuggler's Copter, and indeed the Beseech. The Beseech on the Copter is going to go for the Shieldred. Okay, and now it's time to gain that life back up. This was the other option with Beseech. You don't Beseech the ring, but you Beseech for Shieldred, and then you don't care about the ring damage anymore. And again, just such ridiculous card advantage at this point. There's not really anything the Teferi player can do. Once the One Ring lands and gets in motion, the game is over. If it's not removed or met with a ring on the other player's side. One of the reasons I personally do not like the ring in this format at all, because it creates these sort of super lopsided games where one player finds it, is able to stick it, and then the other player just never has a chance. So Momo upkeep Scries, draws into Udovan's Veto, and really just has nothing to do in all the senses. Can't use their mana, can't cast a spell. This is just painful. No. MathemaTiGer lays out a Bowmaster. Really, they don't need to commit anything more to the board. They've got a huge hand, so they might as well. Is going to escape the Crucia to get rid of that last card in Momo's hand. And then can do something like Blitz, the Tenacious Underdog, or play Phoenix of the Ash. Or Chemical Phoenix, a lot of hasty threats here. So on the board, we're looking at 4, 5, 6 damage, plus an additional 2 from Shieldred on Momo's upkeep, so that's 8 damage. Here comes Phoenix of the Ash, escaped with a +1/+1 counter on it. So it's going to get Momo down to 4 life. This is hard. This is hard. As somebody who enjoys to play control and tempo decks, watching Momo just get dismantled by the One Ring is a painful experience. But it happens. It happens to the best of us. I'm not even sure what. Maybe a farewell here is the out, but even with the upkeep Scry, there's not going to be the mana to cast it, and that's game. MathemaTiGer taking a clean 2-0. Sorry for not staying up with the score. Let's see, player 2. So it is clean at this point, 2-0. MathemaTiGer just running laps now. And there it is, the winner's final. So MathemaTiGer will move on to face the winner of Momo playing Teferi versus Dahoya playing Winoda Join of Forces. Not sure when that game will be, but I hope you've enjoyed this game, this little taste of what competitive Brawl can be like. So here we had the Azorius control deck versus the Rakdos aggro deck. Really glad that you got to see the Rakdos aggro deck highlighted. I think is a really fun deck. Really skill intensive to play well. You have to know the deck very well, but it can do amazing things. It has game against many other kinds of decks. So if you're interested, swing by the Brawl Hub. You can always join our league. We run generally a month-long league. It's free to enter. You can enter during any week of play, and you can choose a different deck each week of play. You get 3 different matches. in 3 different pairings against range of opponents who have all brought their own deck. And the pairings are done based on each person's ranking. So you start the league, you start that month of league play with everybody ranked equally, and as you continue to play in the league, the better you do, the better your opponents will be. And the worse you do, the more you will play against people with similar results. It's a fun place. We usually have between 20 and 50 players, depending on the week and the season. So come by and check it out if you're interested, or just stop by and hang out with us on our server. We really like Brawl. Thanks for watching.